Okay, welcome to this episode of the People's Garage. Today we're going to be talking about the P0420 and P0430 codes. If you have a 4-cylinder engine, you're only going to get the P0420. If you have a 6-cylinder or 8-cylinder, you have another bank, you have a possibility of getting a P0430 code. 420 means one catalytic converter failed, and 430 means that the other side has failed, bank 2. You have to look it up, bank 1 and bank 2 for your vehicle, and see which side that is. You can Google that pretty easily and see which side it is. For instance, if you have a Ford, bank 1 is going to be passenger side. If you have a Chevy, bank 1 is going to be the driver's side. Okay, so just look it up for your vehicle. All the imports will be a little bit different. Okay, so 420 basically means your catalytic converter is showing up not efficient to the computer. I could tell you 90 to 95% of the time it is the catalytic converter that causes this code. This is what a catalytic converter looks like here. This is usually off like a Chevy truck, pretty heavy one here. Inside the converter there is a honeycomb material. Let me see if you can see that there. It's like a honeycomb material. You should be able to see pretty much through it. This one looks pretty good actually. On the other side, same thing. It's a honeycomb material inside. And on the converter itself, you're going to have, when the pipes are all connected to the exhaust, you have an O2 sensor in the front and an O2 sensor in the back. The back one's what picks up this code. The only real way to diagnose this, there's a couple ways actually. You can heat test the converter if you have a heat gun. You're going to heat test before the converter, and however far you go from the pipe with the heat gun, you need to go the same on the back. Okay, so if you heat test it up here, the converter should cause a chemical reaction inside. So if you heat test it here and the pipe shows 300 degrees, you want to see about 400 out of this back pipe. If you see 300 before and 200 after, and the vehicle's warmed up and everything's operating condition, that's not a good converter. You shouldn't be losing heat. With the chemical reaction going on in here with the gases and the precious metals that are inside this, you should be gaining heat afterwards. That's one way to test it if you don't have a fancy scan tool. If you have a scan tool, you need to look at your oxygen sensor readings. The oxygen sensor in the front, every front oxygen sensor, if you're looking on the scan tool, should be going up, down, up, down, up, down, lean rich, lean rich, lean rich. Like 0.1 to 0.9 or 0.2 to 0.8, up, down, up, down, up, down. The back one, when everything's running good, you want to see it at like 0.7 or 0.8. You want to see it up at the higher end and just steadily across. Maybe every now and then a little fluctuation. But if the back one starts to look like the front one and it's going up, down, up, down, up, down, that means that the gases are passing right through here and that they're not, basically the converter's failed at that point. They're not going through the chemical reaction. The converter is kind of like a buffer. Okay, so once the front one, you know, it shows lean rich, then once it passes through here, it should calm everything down and it should have a nice steady flow for the rear oxygen sensor. Okay, so if you have a scan tool, you can check that. If you don't have a scan tool and you just want to guess at it, it's usually a safe guess to just go ahead and replace the converter. I don't like to say that, but you know, you can only work with what you got. So if you got a heat gun, you can test it that way. If you got a scan tool, definitely check your oxygen sensor readings. But if you have to guess at it and you just want to say, hey, what's most likely cause, go ahead and replace the converter. Okay, like in this case here, you can see this is welded in. It's cut, and then welded in with a bead of weld around it. If you don't have a welder, you might want to look for what's known as a direct fit. Direct fit's going to come with a piece of pipe on the front with a flange, and you can just unbolt it using basic hand tools. And the backside should be the same way. You can just bolt it up to a flange. So that's the P0420 and 430 codes. The reason that these codes come on a lot of times, especially if the vehicle's not that old, is an excess of fuel, meaning something's dumping fuel into that exhaust. Also coolant and oil, if it's leaking into the exhaust somehow. You might want to check the gaskets, you really need a scan tool to check a lot of the fuel stuff, but something's dumping fuel into the exhaust. That's the number one reason the catalytic converter fails, is excess fuel. Okay, so that's basic. I just want to go over what the 420 and 430 codes were. I just want to make you guys aware that it's not always a catalytic converter. It could be the oxygen sensors causing it. There's times exhaust leaks can cause the code to come on. If there's a leak in the exhaust and there's air, an air leak basically in the exhaust, then that's going to cause sometimes a 420 or 430 code also. But 90% of the time it's going to be your catalytic converter for the 420 or 430 codes. Okay. If you guys have any questions, you know, you can always leave a comment. I get back to everybody. Email me at mypeoplesgarage@gmail.com or just leave a comment. Okay. But that's basically what the 420 and 430 codes are all about. Thanks for watching.